Hello, Christ is in our midst. I'm Father Kevin Long of St. Elias Antiochian Orthodox Church in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Today is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026, and here are the readings for today. A reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 43, verses 26 through 31, and chapter 45, verses 1 through 16. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which they had with them, and bowed down to him to the ground. And he inquired about their welfare, and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes, and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph made haste, for his heart yearned for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out. Controlling himself, he said, "Let food be served." Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Make haste, and go up to my father, and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry, and you shall dwell in the land of Goshen. And you shall be near me, you and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. And there I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty.' And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and of all that you have seen. Make haste, and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck, and he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that his brothers talked with him. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, "Joseph's brothers have come," it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. A reading from the prophecy of Isaiah, chapter 58, verses 1 through 11. Thus says the Lord, "Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their transgression, to the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways, as if they were a nation that did righteousness and did not forsake the ordinance of their God. They ask of me righteous judgments. They delight to draw near to God. Why have we fasted, and thou seest it not? Why have we humbled ourselves, and thou takest no knowledge of it? Behold, in the day of your fast you seek your own pleasure and oppress all your workers. Behold, you fast only to quarrel and to fight and to hit with wicked fist. Fasting like yours this day will not make your voice to be heard on high. Is such the fast that I choose, a day for a man to humble himself? Is it to bow down his head like a rush, and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Will you call this a fast, and a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh. Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Your righteousness shall go before you, the glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, Here I am. If you take away from the midst of you the yoke, the pointing of the finger, and speaking wickedness, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness, and your gloom be as the noonday. And the Lord will guide you continually, and satisfy your desire with good things, and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters fail not. A reading from the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 23 through chapter 22, verse 4. He who keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Scoffer is the name of the proud, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. All day long the wicked covets, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with evil intent? A false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but an upright man considers his ways. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. The rich and the poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. A prudent man sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. We are in the last Wednesday of the Great Fast, and Palm Sunday is days away, and the church places before us one of the most emotionally overwhelming scenes in Genesis, one of the great prophetic passages on the meaning of fasting, and Proverbs on the tongue and the humble heart. They belong together more deeply than they first might appear. Genesis has been building towards this moment for chapters. Joseph's brothers arrive in Egypt. They bow before the man they do not recognize, the brother they sold into slavery, the one whose coat they dipped in blood and carried back to their father. 20 years, more or less, have passed. Joseph is now second only to Pharaoh. He has been through the pit and the prison and the long silence of God's apparent absence, and he has arrived at this extraordinary position of power, and his brothers are bowing before him exactly as the dreams of his youth said they would. He recognizes them immediately. They do not recognize him at all. What Joseph does next is not what we might expect from a man with every reason for bitterness. He does not reveal himself immediately. He tests them, not out of cruelty, but out of the need to know whether they are still the men who threw him into the pit, or whether something in them has changed. And when he sees that Judah is willing to offer himself as a slave in the place of Benjamin, he cannot contain himself any longer. Quote, "He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it." Close quote. Then he sends everyone out, and alone with his brothers he says the sentence that has echoed through the tradition ever since. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" The brothers cannot answer him. They are dismayed. The Hebrew suggests something closer to terrified in his presence. They have spent 20 years carrying what they did, and now the one they did it to is standing right before them, weeping and asking about their father. And Joseph says, quote, "Come near to me," unquote. He draws them close and he says again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." And then immediately, before they can speak, before the terror can solidify into shame that cannot be crossed, he says, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." This is one of the most theologically significant acts of forgiveness in the entire Old Testament. Joseph does not minimize what was done to him. He names it plainly, "whom you sold." But he places it inside a larger frame that neither he nor his brothers could have constructed. God sent me before you. What you intended as destruction, God was using as provision. The pit, the slavery, the prison, the silence, all of it was hidden in a path of divine purpose that none of them could see from inside. Saint Irenaeus of Lyon, in his book 4, chapter 21 of Against Heresies, reads Joseph explicitly as a type of Christ, the beloved Son, handed over by his own, sold for silver, imprisoned unjustly, exalted to the right hand of the ruler, and finally the one through whom life is preserved for many. The parallel is not incidental. It is the structure of the gospel itself, played out in advance in an Egyptian throne room, with tears that could not be suppressed and a command to come near. Father Thomas Hopko, in his book, The Winter Pascha, speaks of this kind of forgiveness. The forgiveness that names the wound and then refuses to let the wound be the final word. Not or as the specifically Christian form of reconciliation. Not the pretense that nothing has happened, not the management of grievance, but the genuine absorption of the cost and the genuine release of the offender. Joseph does not say it didn't matter. He said God was in it. These are not the same thing, and the distinction is everything. We are days from Holy Week. The one who will enter Jerusalem on Sunday is the one of whom Joseph is a type. The one who will be handed over by his own, who will pass through the pit of death, who will emerge as the source of life for many. And the forgiveness spoken in that Egyptian throne room, "Do not be distressed, God sent me," is the shape of what the cross will accomplish. "Come near me," he says, and this is still what is being said. Isaiah 58 is one of the great prophetic texts on fasting, and its placement on the last Wednesday of the Great Fast is not accidental. The Church is asking us, before we enter Holy Week, to examine honestly what the fast has actually been. The passage opens with God instructing the prophet to cry aloud, spare nothing, and tell the people their transgression. They seek God daily. They delight to know his ways. They ask for righteous judgments. They fast. And yet, why have we fasted and you see it not? Why have we been humbled and yet you take no knowledge of it? And God's answer is direct. On the day of your fast, you seek your own pleasure. You fast and quarrel and fight. You fast to make your voice heard on high, meaning as a technique for getting what you want. Is such the fast that I chose? And then the fast that God does choose, loosing the bonds of wickedness, undoing the straps of the yoke, letting the oppressed go free, sharing bread with the hungry, bringing the homeless poor into your house, covering the naked. St. Basil the Great, in his homily 1 on fasting, makes this argument exactly, that the fast from food is only the beginning, and that its purpose is to free the energy and attention otherwise consumed by appetite and redirect it towards God and neighbor. The fast that God chooses is not the absence of food, it is the presence of justice. The reduced eating is meant to produce the increased attention to God in prayer and to the neighbor in need. If it has not done that, then something has gone wrong somewhere between the kitchen and the heart. Saint Maria of Paris spent her whole life thinking and living such things as Isaiah 58. She understood with clarity that sometimes life made her difficult to be around, that the religious life, which does not issue forth in the loosing of bonds and the sharing of bread, is not the religious life that the prophets themselves are describing. She wrote in her essays that genuine asceticism is not self-punishment, but self-emptying, the creation of space in which the other can actually be received. The fast creates space. Isaiah tells us what is meant to fill it. And then the promise, which is as generous as the requirement is searching. Quote, "Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, Here I am. Here I am." The same words Abraham spoke on the way to Moriah. The same words the servant spoke at his commissioning. The same words that will echo through Holy Week and beyond. The fast that loosens bonds and shares bread is the fast that produces the encounter, the prayer that is actually answered, the cry that is actually heard. Saint Sophrony, in his Life is Mine, speaks of this dynamic in terms of the relationship between humility and divine presence. That God draws near to the one who has genuinely emptied themselves, not as a reward for performance, but because the emptying creates the actual interior space in which the presence becomes possible. Isaiah 58 is saying the same thing in prophetic rather than in mystical language. The fast that works in the fast that works is the fast that opens the person, opens them to God in prayer, opens them to the neighbor in service. We are at the end of 40 days. The question Isaiah is asking is worth sitting with honestly before we enter Holy Week. Has the fast been that kind of fast? Has the light begun to break forth? And if not entirely, which is probably the honest answer for most of us, there is still time. The promise is still active. Here I am is still being said. And then Proverbs closes with characteristic precision. Quote, "Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble." Unquote. And then, again in quoting, "The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life." Unquote. The Septuagint renders the closing verse with a particular weight, saying riches and glory and life, not just riches and honor and life, as the inheritance of the humble soul, the one who has learned to guard the tongue and walk in the fear of the Lord. The connection to Joseph is exact. He guarded himself for years in the pit, in the prison, in the years of waiting. And when the moment came, he spoke with extraordinary precision and extraordinary generosity. He did not use the power he had accumulated to exact what he was owed. He used it to preserve life. And this is the fruit that the humility of Proverbs is describing, not the absence of strength, but its proper direction. St. Maximus the Confessor, in the 2nd century of his 4 centuries on love, section 36, argues that genuine humility is not a mood or a performance, but a stable orientation of the soul that has been formed by the long practice of prayer and self-knowledge. The soul that knows what it is before God and therefore does not need to assert itself against others. Joseph knew what he was before God. He had spent years learning it in the darkness. And when his brothers stood before him terrified, he drew them close. 3 readings, and between them a single shape. Joseph weeps so loudly that the Egyptians hear it and sends everyone out and says to the brothers who betrayed him, "Come near me. I am your brother. God sent me before you to preserve life." Isaiah tells us what the fast is actually for. Not the performance of religious observance, but for the loosing of bonds, the sharing of bread, the creation of the space in which God says, "Here I am." And Proverbs closes with the ancient quiet truth: the humility and the fear of the Lord lead to life, and that the tongue guarded and the heart emptied are the precondition for the riches that actually last. We are almost at Palm Sunday. The one who enters Jerusalem on a donkey is the one of whom Joseph is a type, handed over, imprisoned, exalted, and finally the source of life for the many who did not deserve it. He will weep over Jerusalem as Joseph wept over his brothers. He will draw us near as Joseph drew near. And the words spoken from the cross, "Father, forgive them," are Joseph's words spoken at the ultimate depth. The fast ends, Holy Week begins, and the fast that God chooses, the loosing of bonds and the broken bread, the open door, does not end with Lent. It is simply what the Christian life looks like on the other side of the tomb. Come near to me. It is still being said, and it will always be being said. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Have a great day, and God willing, we'll see you tomorrow.